What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Prodigious Customs YouTube channel. Today we're getting down with the dusty and we're going to start sanding some body filler and applying it to this car, fixing some dents and going about making it so it looks nice. When we go to paint it, we won't have any issues. Going to address 3 or 4 dents in the door itself and 1 in the quarter that's right behind the fuel door. I'm not sure how they got there or whatever, but it doesn't matter since we're going ahead and painting this side of the car. Might as well fix them while we're there instead of leave them and have dents in the car after it's freshly painted. So I want to give you some of the do's and do nots of body filler, and I want to teach you basically what I've learned throughout the years of doing it. There's lots of good techniques, there's lots of tools, there's lots of tricks. There's a lot you can learn from a lot of different people. So find what you like, what works best for you. I'm going to show you what works best for me personally, what I use on the daily, and how to go about making your car look straight and as good as the panel can. So let's get into this. Alrighty, so the first thing to do that you're going to want to do is an inspection, initial inspection, and kind of give yourself a roadmap of what you're fixing, what you're leaving, what needs more work, and so on. So I like to start with edges of doors and fenders. Well, this one's clearly got some visible damage, which means at some point in this life it was hit in the front and the fender was shoved into the door, or something hit this fender and the door, but the door never got fixed. The fender's clearly been painted and looks nice, but the door got left alone and, you know, whatever, move on. Next, you're going to want to look down your body panels. There should be a perfect reflection. If you see something like this, and I don't know how well the camera picks it up, there's a dent in there. As you see the light move through it, shapes kind of distort. That's a dent. You need to get that out of there. So, what I like to do is kind of mark them out with some tape. Alrighty, so now I've marked out everything that I want to fix. A lot of them are small and easy to fix. They're not going to take much work. The one up here on the quarter is just pinholes, bad bodywork. I want to get those pinholes fixed before I start blocking the car, because if you don't, you're just going to keep trying to sand them out. They're not going to sand out, and you're going to burn through and create a whole lot more problems for no issue. The ones along the back edge of the quarter here are just chips. I want to go ahead and just fix those and get some primer on them while I'm here. The one right behind the fuel door, that guy right there, is a big, looks like a door dent. There's clearly a scuff in the paint and took a hit at some point in its life. So I definitely want to fix that. It's very noticeable. All of these are small. This one's big. And the one at the front of the door is going to require a little bit of hammer and dolly. So, with that said, the very first step after inspecting and what you're doing is clean the panel. I can't stress that enough. Whether you're working with bare metal, over old paints, old primers, whatever you're working with, whatever substrate it is, make sure you clean it well with lacquer thinner, water-based cleaner, wax and grease remover, whatever you have, to make sure that the panel is clean before you ever start sanding it. If you start sanding it before you've cleaned it, you're shoving those contaminants down into your bodywork area. So when you go to apply your bodywork over the top of it, you have the potential of that bodywork failing and coming off the panel later. Something you do not want to deal with. Next thing to judge, do you have good access to the back side of the panel or not? Can you get a hammer in there and swing it or not? How deep is the dent? Are you going to cause more damage by trying to pound it out than it would be to fill it? And if you are going to fill it, how deep is it going to be? Most body fillers are not recommended to go thicker than an 1/8 inch. An 1/8 is not that thick, so you're not going to be fixing a dent where somebody T-boned your car. It's just not a good idea. So what really comes in handy is a ruler. This one's a little exaggerated, but we know our dent is right here, okay? You can stick your ruler up over the top of that, visually look down, and see how deep that dent is. This one is a 32nd, maybe, probably even a 64th. So we are well within our limits. If we try to pound this out with a hammer and dolly, sometimes you're gonna leave yourself a bunch of half moons from your hammer, or you're gonna make this metal stretch and start coming towards you, creating a high in the door, which you don't want. If your dent is small enough, it's best to leave it alone. And a good rule of thumb is to go 4 inches past the damage point. Now, on a dent this small, yes, that's a bit exaggerated. But generally, it's best when wiping it, even if you keep it super thin out here, you're gonna cheat the eye and there's no longer gonna be a dent there and there's not gonna be a visible high here, which you want. So, what's 4 inches? Well, that's 4 inches past the dent, the edge of the dent. You're not gonna go from the middle, but from the edge. So, with that said, we're gonna prep all of this area to fix this little dent. Same with this dent, and this dent. So what I like to do is just get your block ready with some 180 grit on it and just highlight what you're fixing. So for this particular dent, I'm gonna use a 4-inch block. Now you can use something that's stiff, and just to note, the stiffer it is or the harder, for example acrylic, the straighter it's gonna be. With Velcro, you have the backing of the Velcro, which is soft, as well as the hooks on your block that are gonna give it some give. You're gonna lose some of your rigidity in that. So keep that in mind when bodyworking, whatever you're bodyworking. If it's not straight enough, check out your block. Make sure that you're using a hard enough block to make it straight. If it's not that big of a deal where, I mean, it's a simple dent, you really don't care how straight is straight as long as it looks good and blocks out, this will do you just fine. But when you start getting into show cars and all that, it matters what kind of block you're using and how you use it. This is simple. We're just gonna stick with this simple block and highlight our area. So we know our dent's right here. So what I'm gonna do is work in a cross hatch pattern. That's gonna create a flat spot here because we have, if there was a high here, we're cutting it down as we slide this way and vice versa. So ultimately an X pattern will get you the straightest, flattest result as long as you do them equally. So just a 45-degree slide is kind of what you gotta think of. And look at that. Although our dent looks this small, look how much is actually being highlighted. More of a 50-cent piece versus a dime. So that's why you need to take your bodywork farther than you actually expect. Is because that damage really extends beyond that area. And you don't want to use a lot of pressure, especially in the middle of a flat panel. This one has a slight curve, which helps. But still, you do want to let your sandpaper do the work for you. And give yourself plenty of area for your body filler to stick to. Okay. So as you can see, we're ready to scuff this area up. If you don't scuff that area up, guess what? Your body filler is not gonna stick there. So what I like to do is grab a piece of 80 and come back in there by hand and just kind of work through it and scuff it up. Make sure that it's got plenty of tooth to stick to. If there is any shiny spots, make sure you come back in, knock them down, Make them look all flat, scratched up. That's what you want. I'll prep these other couple of dents so that I'm not having to spread 15 different times to get the same result. So let me get to doing that. Alrighty, we got it all sanded, ready to go. And it appears that my back two dents are gone, that there was enough clear coat on the car to get rid of them. Well, that's maybe true, or it might not be. There's a magical product called Guide Coat, and that allows you to apply a darker layer or a lighter layer to whatever you're working on. In this case, I'm working on a silver car. I want some black Guide Coat. And it allows you to see what's going on with your panel. So now that I got it spread on there, I want to make sure that these two dents are gone. Because if you depend on your primer to fix a dent, like this one, it's going to shrink back. Time and time again have shown that primer shrinks. Now, how to properly fix that is to put a little bit of filler in your low spot and make it right. So I want to make sure for 100% certain that these two little door dingers back here are 100% gone. I don't want to depend on primer as a crutch because I don't want this shrinking back later and showing the repair. I want to fix it right. So to make sure I've fixed it right, I'll go ahead and just run my block back over where those two little dents were in here. Cross pattern just to make sure everything's happy. Straight. And it appears that they are 100% gone, which is fantastic. I'll take it. Let's move in to fixing this dent here. Let's take a second to talk about pinholes. These things are the devil of bodywork. What it is, it's an air pocket from spreading your mud, just slapping that crap on there and hoping it sticks. When you go to cut it, there's air bubbles that are trapped in there that then pop through. And that's a lot of what's going on with whoever had previously bodyworked this that I found. So, while we're mixing up primer, I'm gonna go ahead and spot these back in. But first, I'm gonna put a little bit of polyester glaze in there, or body filler, to go ahead and fix them. Well, you don't wanna just put that crap in there. As easy as it is to do, they also make like one-stop products, combination putty, one-shot putty, whatever, to just go ahead and fill those. Well, grab your Scotch-Brite, run over the top of them, give them a tooth, give it a better chance to stick down in there. I'm gonna be using polyester since I'm already gonna be putting filler on different areas of the body of the car. Might as well go ahead and take care of these pinholes at the same time. Now, mixing up a little bit of polyester or plastic filler or whatever, there's lots of names for it, mud. You kind of want to create yourself a roadmap. How much do I want to mix up? How fast is it going to kick off? What are the temperatures outside? What's the humidity? All of these have an effect on your hardener and how fast it kicks off, and how big your dent is and how much time you spend playing with it. Ideally, you want to get it as smooth as possible. That entails blocking easier and straighter. If you have a whole bunch of lines in it or lumpies or whatever, it's going to take more coats. You're most likely going to end up with a high spot, and it's just not going to block out very nice. So the tighter you can get it, the flatter you can get it, and the smoother you can get it are all going to play in effect. Especially your first coat, you want to go ahead and take your spreader and really push hard, push into that dent tightly, the filler. It doesn't matter if it's just a little thin coat or you're spreading a lot of mud. That first coat needs to be pushed into the panel really hard, not so much that you dent the panel obviously, but enough that it's gonna stick into those scratches you've put there. Because if you just go ahead and throw your mud on there and just kind of spread it out, all of these scratches that we put in for it to stick to, that mud's floating across there or just barely bridging across the top. It doesn't have the ability to go down to the bottom of that and bite on. That's what you want. You want proper adhesion so that it sticks and it lasts. You don't need to slam your door and boom, have a chunk of freaking body filler falling off. You need that stuff to stick in there and stay proper. Create yourself a roadmap. Okay, I'm gonna start with this dent and see how kicked off the mud is between here and the next dent. Well, then I'll get to the next dent and spread it, and the next one and the next one, and hope that my body filler hasn't kicked off. Well, it depends how much hardener you put in there. Depending on how much hardener and the temperature and the humidity, it may kick off fast or slow. Or if you don't put enough hardener in there, it might not even kick off at all until 2 years from now, who knows? You're gonna end up scraping it off and starting over. So you wanna make sure there's at least enough hardener in there to kick it off. If it kicks off too fast, whatever, you can sand it off and start over. If it doesn't kick off, you can scrape it off and start over. It's a lot of a learning curve of what you like, your preferences, how fast, how hot, and how you like it. I mean, it's fine-tuned of especially how you do it. Not everybody does it the same. Nobody that I've met does it the same. And I've worked with quite a few different ways of people doing it. So with that said, enough talking. Let's spread a little bit of body filler on here. Today I'm gonna be using some glaze. Now it's usually used over the top of other polyester fillers that usually have a higher build. This is thinner, it spreads nicer, and if you have pinholes in your crap, it's gonna help you to push into those and fill them up easier. This also works great for small dents and small repairs. That's what I'm using it for. I don't need the high build because as you saw, that's about a 64th of material that I need on the panel itself. So I don't need to be worrying about high build or any of that. Something that works, something that sands nice, something that's gonna work for you. So, just throw a little bit of it on my mixing board here. Now this is gonna be enough to do the dent here, the one on the back, the 2 little chips that I fixed, as well as the pinholes up top, I'm hoping, depending on how fast it kicks off. Before putting your hardener in there, make sure you knead it. Just like a good loaf of bread, what you can do is remove all the air basically from the tube, put your cap back on there, and make sure that you knead this thing. You don't want a whole bunch of water coming out. Just like if you're going to eat a corn dog, you better shake that ketchup up or you're gonna end up with a whole lot of water on your plate. It's disgusting and nobody wants it. So, make sure you knead that up. Put your preference of hardener down. And then, again, make sure your panel is clean. You've been sanding on it. It's gonna be dusty. Get out your wax and grease, wipe the panel down, blow it off, get it clean of all the dust because the dust will also prevent your material from sticking to the panel. So you don't want that. Clean, 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 clean. Can't stress it enough. The cleaner the panel is, the better the results. So make sure you clean it again and again and again. Alrighty, now we're to mix in our body filler. Do not spin this stuff. Spinning it, twisting it, mixing it in that fashion creates more air bubbles. That in turn creates pinholes. I hate pinholes, and so does any other painter or body guy. Well, maybe the body guys don't care, but especially painters hate pinholes because you have a product that's going in the booth. You may have sprayed your sealer down or you're starting to spray base, or even if you make it all the way to clear and see a bunch of holes, well, that panel's disgusting. You need to sand that down and redo it. please make sure you spread your mud properly. That body filler needs to be thoroughly mixed without pinholes. Primer will help you, but make sure that the better it is, the easier it's gonna go for you later. So just scoop it up and press hard and thoroughly mix in your hardener. You want it to be completely mixed in, one solid color. No streaks going through it. I'm not twisting in a mixing shape, nothing like that. Just straight lines. Scoop it up, put it down, put plenty of pressure to get it mixed up. Okay, once it's one solid color, you're ready to put it on the panel. So get enough on your spreader. Ready to put it on. First coat, nice and tight. Really push it into that dent. And then with your following coats, you want to chase it out a little bit. Oh, something got in my mud. It's always the worst. You do not want lines in there. And like I said, the smoother you can get it, the better this stuff will sand. And know when to stop. Don't keep spreading it, spreading it, spreading it. I like to round off my edges, helps feather it out. Move on to the next one. For pinholes, I especially like to use a razor blade. It's gonna allow me to just put enough in there. That looks good. My pinhole is completely filled up. There's not too much material around it, and I can be happy with that. As you can see, there's pinholes everywhere in here from whatever bodywork was done previously. So as long as I got those filled up, that'll block out and I should be just fine. Alrighty, now that it's spread on there, how long do you let it sit? Well, it depends how much hardener you put in there. It's gonna slowly continue to kick off, and the longer it kicks off, the harder it becomes. You wanna catch it in a semi-green state. Not so green that when you go to sand it, it's just peeling it off the panel or just gumming up your paper. You wanna sand it when it's starting to powder up. Okay, Jason, how do I check when it's powdering up? Well, one way to check is how does it feel? Don't put your finger right in the middle of the panel. Check the outsides of it. Should be just tacky enough, but not that it's coming off on your fingers. So you know you have longer to wait. Another thing to remember is how much mud did you spread? Well, are you gonna be able to catch it all in the green state? Something to think about when you're spreading your mud. Next question is, Jason, what grit do I use? You wanna jump on it with as coarse as you can. The coarser it is, the straighter it's gonna be. I'm gonna start out with 80 on this. I'm gonna chase it down, get rid of all my spread marks, and then switch to 180 to finish it out. Well, what happens if you take it too far and you can fill your dent in it again? That's just fine. You can spread one more application. Most dents are gonna take you 2 spreads. So don't be discouraged if it takes you 3, 4 your first time bodyworking. Everyone that has ever bodyworked has been there. Unless you're some golden child that can just make magic happen, that's a bunch of bull, whatever. I ain't believing it. You might have the talent and you might pick it up fast. That's great. But most people that when they're first starting out, start out right here, fixing little dents, and they might spread this panel 3, 4 times to get it right. And hey, it might not even be right. It might end up with a high spot from here to here. That's just fine. You need to start somewhere, and why not do it on your own project and on your own time? It's a great way to learn, and it's a great skill to have. As long as people are gonna be driving cars, they're gonna be wrecking them. And as long as people are going to Walmart on windy days, they're gonna let that door fly right into yours and put dents in it all day long. Can you have them PDR'd? Yes, absolutely. Can you fix them yourself? Heck yes, you can. You just have to believe in yourself, a little bit of practice, a little bit of time spent in the garage, and you'll be body working in no time. Don't get discouraged. It is a discouraging process, especially when you can't figure out what's going on. If anything else, find a good mentor. They'll help you out. I've had several along my journey, and I can't be thankful enough to them. Alrighty, we're gonna cut the video there. Sorry about that, but it's such good information, and it'll really help you if you decide to go down this path. So I don't want to cut it out, but at the same time, I don't want to make a really long, lengthy video. So with that said, thanks for watching. I'll put out more videos on this process so that you can learn and grow along the way. And with that, I appreciate the heck out of you, and I hope you have a great freaking day.